Hi, this is Scott Ware, the publisher and editor of Radiance Magazine, and also the Radiance channel on Xpnsion Network. Now, a lot of us have been hearing that magic mushrooms have many medicinal benefits that have actually helped, not make any medical claims, but help with cancer, PTSD, and many other conditions, multiple sclerosis. And we're going to talk about that today. That there are places in the country that, in America, where it is now legal, just as cannabis has been made legal in California and other places. And I have an expert with me. Sarkin has worked as a health practitioner for the last 30 years, mainly in detox programs such as colonics, vegetable juicing, meditation, exercise, and qigong. Now, for the past 10 years, he's been involved with plant medicines for deep inner healing, release of trauma, and release of blocked energies. Welcome, Sel. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for inviting me, Scott. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Now, I encountered you first, actually, in I think it was Santa Monica or Venice, at a class, a workshop where you were educating people on the uses of psychedelia and the medicinal uses for that. And that's something that you're very much a proponent of, as far as educating people on the benefits of mushrooms, which have been around for millions of years.
Yes, I gave a talk, and the title was The Psychedelic Renaissance. What we've been finding is a real resurgence of psychedelic medicines to help people, and where it's become particularly noted for cases like depression and PTSD. Obviously, there's many other areas where psychedelic medicines have a profound healing effect. But we can talk about perhaps what's more in the news, or more that's taking up people's awareness of how these medicines have helped, and the limitations of pharmaceutical drugs.
Absolutely. And there's a movie out right now that I'm sure by the time people see this, maybe they can find it online, called Fantastic Fungi, which talks about how prevalent and important to the ecosystem mushrooms are. And there is a section on it on the psychedelic benefits, and the fact that the main guy in the film, Alan Saritz, was actually had a stutter that after one session with psychedelic mushrooms was able to remove the stutter.
Yeah, that was a great story he shared. Paul Stamets has really become,
thank you, yes,
in a sense, a legend around the amazing versatility of mushrooms in how they support the immune system. They can clear up oil spills. They're bringing out patents now for so many areas in technology where fungi are super beneficial.
Yeah, and it's interesting because these, you talk about having medicinal effects, but there's also emotional or spiritual effects of these substances. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so what we find over the last 50 years with pharmaceutical drugs, particularly, let's talk about antidepressants, and in fact the same drugs are used for anxiety. However, when you ask or interview a person using these drugs over a long period of time and ask them, well, how do you feel? And the majority of cases, the person will say, I'm functional, I feel kind of better, but my emotional life is extremely non-existent. In other words, I don't feel anything. I don't feel high or low. I'm just, in a way, out to lunch.
Right.
Now, what they found, let's say with PTSD, which is an extreme form of anxiety or extreme form of emotion, which includes despair, is the rate of suicides with those people on pharmaceutical drugs. Now, people who've started to use mushrooms, and the common name is Psilocybin cubensis. This is the most popular mushroom that's currently being taken for PTSD, depression, and so on. And what really goes on is a repair of the brain chemistry. And it seems that no pharmaceutical drug has managed to really repair brain chemistry, brain function, so that when a person wakes up in the morning, that feeling of either I'm not really here or I'm depressed, that feeling is gone.
Wow. Okay.
And they feel enthusiastic. They can feel enthusiastic. They feel better. They feel perhaps my depression is gone. I know what depression feels like. And I've been taking these mushrooms even for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually wake up saying, you know what, I can tell there's a big difference.
That is amazing. And perhaps it's those kinds of cases that are pushing legislatures to legalize mushrooms in several cities so far. And there's a point where there's just, I know when I attended one of your meetings, it was a full house. I just want to read what the meetup says under at meetup.com, psychedelia. We are an inclusive community interested in psychospiritual uses of psychedelics and plant medicines. Together, we offer and receive emotional support to those who have experimented with mind-altering substances and other states of consciousness. We share integration practices that encourage a sound return to a balanced state following psychedelic experiences. We also learn about the myriad ways psychedelics are currently used for various therapeutic purposes in shamanism and science alike. Locally, our events include sharing circles, shamanic workshops, educational courses, medicine retreats, and more, all about safety, education, and connection. The disclaimer is they don't encourage or condone any illegal activities, purchase, sale, transfer, use of any illegal substances. But the education is very important. And what do you find people are coming out to learn? Obviously, if they have depression or PTSD, they'd like to get rid of that. What are some of the other aspects that they're looking into?
So you had mentioned that cannabis and mushrooms, well, let's start with cannabis. Cannabis has been widely used as a medicine, a plant medicine for cancer. And although we can say cannabis has psychedelic properties, the use of cannabis for cancer is targeted more on the physical level, meaning to actually get rid of the cancer so a person can have a full recovery.
Yes.
That's the concept. Now, magic mushrooms are used or starting to be used more for the spiritual aspect of someone who has cancer, meaning a person can use a full dose of mushrooms and they will have a journey or a spiritual awakening around what is going on with them regarding the cancer. And a person may come to a point of getting certain messages why they have the cancer. What can they do to let it go or to start a healing process?
Now, I'm wondering if it's required that people have a spiritual practice, because in spirituality, we understand that we create our reality. We have more than a little something to do with anything that's happening, not just in our life, but in our bodies and in our minds. So understanding that we have the power to alter that and change that is very empowering, and magic mushrooms can help with that.
So that's a very, very important conversation piece in itself, that in the West, we've, in a sense, separated the physical body from the spirit. In other words,
yes,
people have researched and tried to bring out drugs that simply address a physical issue. What we're finding is that's only half of the picture. As soon as you include the spirit of the person, what's going on with them psychically, emotionally, the factor of healing suddenly dramatically goes up by a huge amount.
Yes.
And so when we start to include the spirit of the person around their healing, their physical healing, actually life gets so much easier for them. And we see that where a person may have taken a long time to recover or not even recover, quite often a 1 or 2 psychedelic journeys can initiate a massive transformation and a profound healing on that person very quickly.
It's been reported by a lot of people that certain belief systems that really weren't serving them, although they didn't know it, or they did, were more easily you were able to let them go, and getting rid of that kind of perhaps sometimes negative thinking or just limiting thinking.
Right.
Just makes sense that that would lead to healing in the body.
Well, what we carry with us, which is initiated from childhood, is our programming, our indoctrination, belief systems. And so, for example, someone with cancer who initially comes to me, and I say to them, well, you have some choices here. Do you want to do chemotherapy or try plant medicine and use holistic medicine?
Right.
So the fear factor, and as a result of indoctrination, is a person says, I can only do chemotherapy. That's it. I'm not going to try anything else. Right. So they go off and do chemo and find they've not got the results they were looking for. And now they realize, well, wait a minute, I'm dying.
That's right.
Nothing else I can do.
Right.
At that point, they become open to going beyond their indoctrination. And it's at that point that they actually have a spiritual experience. Because as soon as death becomes really present and looks you in the face, you're willing to go beyond your ego to perhaps something that really is supportive and can help you heal.
Right.
And so it's kind of sad, or it's an interesting aspect. We as a species always bring ourselves to a crisis point. It's very few people who will be proactive before they get into a crisis. So the crisis is often, doesn't matter whether it's your health, you're in a relationship, your finances. We tend to wait until that crisis hits and then make the change.
That's right. It's sort of human nature in that way. Luckily, a lot of these things can be reversed. So in the interest of providing resources for people to go to do their own research, to watch videos, perhaps of you or others, it seems like they could start, a good place to start up is meetup.com and type in psychedelia to find your groups where you meet either online or in public. What other website would you recommend they go to for this information?
So it depends on the type of medicine that they are interested in. So for example, ayahuasca is very, very popular all over the world now, and there are ceremonies happening probably on a daily basis in many, many countries around the world. So if you go and just look up ayahuasca, you'll probably see a whole host of retreats being offered, whether it's in Costa Rica or Peru. I mean, obviously ayahuasca is from South America, the Amazons. But I mean, I've had reports of people doing ceremonies in Siberia and in Greece and in Norway, Australia. So there's facilitators, ceremonies, and it's not that difficult to find. Obviously, I have to always tell people to be cognizant of the legal aspects of doing ceremony or acquiring medicine.
Yes. And your specific website, how could they reach you? Is it best on Facebook or?
Facebook is a good platform to reach me on under Sarkin.
Yeah, Sel, S-E-L, and then Sarkin, S-A-R-K-I-N.
Yeah. And then I hold an integration circle at my house every second Tuesday of the month. So people who are beginners to just wanting to learn about, get psychedelic information.
Sure.
There are seasoned people who come along to share their experiences, the do's and don'ts. And that's really very important, or the do's and don'ts of ceremony and medicine.
Well, yeah, the do's and don'ts, very important. And people are just afraid, right? I mean, they just, plant medicine, it sounds natural. It's from the earth. I mean, it has that going for it. But then you hear things about, with ayahuasca, you have some purging for a lot of people. But mushrooms, of course, much less so, much tamer in that regard, even as it has its own modality. But what do you say to people like that who are just kind of afraid?
So fear really comes from the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And the ego in particular wants to be in control. So people are not afraid of alcohol, which is an intoxicating substance,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a depressant. And where is alcohol going to take you? Well, same thing as an antidepressant. It's going to suppress your system. On the other hand, to do the inner work and inner inquiry, to take something like a mushroom, means your ego essentially is going to start to dissolve, and the control that you have and the fears that you have will begin to dissipate, because you'll start to see life really in what I call a much more loving way than being fear-driven.
Yes.
Now, we've been told and indoctrinated, stay away from these drugs. They don't use the word medicine, they use the word drugs or illegal substances. And that's because there's a second level of control, and that's from authority. Now, if authority is going to control you, they have to make you afraid.
Yes.
You cannot be controlled if you've done the inner work and gone beyond your fear.
Yes.
Somebody can say whatever they want to you, and you say, what the hell are you talking about?
Exactly. And you mentioned chemotherapy. I mean, people are less afraid of chemotherapy. We know how that can ravage you, unless people just ignore that and just say, well, the guys in the white coat said I should be taking that, even though it's going to decimate your immune system. They're less afraid of that than of trying or researching something like mushrooms. And which again, that propaganda machine that you've been talking about has worked, and we need to just try and just to educate people and let them know it's a much tamer experience than you think, but expansive, and can definitely expand your way of seeing the world and yourself.
Yeah. Well, now you're talking about beliefs. And if somebody has been indoctrinated over the last 30, 40 years that if you get cancer, this is the only treatment that works.
Right.
You have to do chemo, you have to do radiation, and we have to cut and remove the cancer surgically.
And it's going to be expensive.
If that's your indoctrination and it's become your belief, it's hard to go out of that, because to tell somebody that there is a humane approach to helping a person get rid of their cancer, where they do not need to suffer. They don't have to feel like they're dying when they're taking the plant medicines or the good medicine.
Yes.
They look at you incredulously and say, I don't believe you.
That's right.
However, the belief, as I mentioned earlier on, will start to become shaky when they're in a crisis. And perhaps death is knocking at the door.
when death's knocking at the door, you're looking at it, you start to say, okay, wait a minute, maybe I should be the main authority on my life and not these disembodied voices in my head from society.
Right. So what we're trying to do at this point, as far as human consciousness goes, or human evolution, is being proactive. So if we can start pulling people out of the matrix,
Yes.
away from their fears and beliefs that don't really serve them but serve others, then we can grow the consciousness of humanity in general, and we'll start to see the dismantling of old systems that only serve a very few greedy, power-hungry people. And we can then start, obviously, to spread community, we spread love, joy. And this is one way not only to heal the individual, but obviously the planet.
I agree. That's beautifully put. Wouldn't you also say that part of the problem with getting people over that hump of fear is the effects that it has, that well, let's just say pleasurable effects at times, depending on what we're talking about. If we're talking about cannabis or mushrooms, and that I don't know, people are maybe afraid they're going to lose their mind and just become something less than human, that's been denigrated. Could you address that part of it?
Yeah. So back in the 50s, when LSD was really being widely used in therapy.
Mm-hmm.
The same with mescaline, the same with mushrooms. There are many substances that were already being extremely widely used in therapeutic use.
Right.
And then obviously we had the counterculture movement, and the whole thing got shut down really starting in the early 70s. Okay.
Right.
Now there's been a resurgence. So people ask a question, will I get addicted to these substances?
Yes.
That's one common fear. And in fact, what we see is the very opposite happening, that people who are addicted to alcohol, to cocaine, to heroin, whatever, actually it breaks their addiction and they can live a normal life. Yeah. If these medicines were not helpful or beneficial, why would there be a renaissance with these medicines?
Yes.
There wouldn't be a renaissance if they actually were ineffective. But you can go online, talk to anybody. Pretty much today, we hear so many remarkable, amazing stories of people recovering from all sorts of conditions, whether it be an abuse that occurred as a child,
Right.
whether it was a trauma in their teenage year, even as far as physical problems, people who have been using CBDs and good cannabis oil extract have had incredible results with pain, different types of pain management. People have found benefits like, as soon as you take cannabis, your blood pressure gets regulated. It's an anti-inflammatory. It's really good for pain. So people are seeing extremely good benefits, and there are no side effects. Cannabis does not damage the liver or scar the tissue. All painkillers have a devastating effect on the stomach and the liver.
Sure.
Right? So, we can talk benefits all day long.
Yep. Yeah. And the
Makes sense.
and if you're a company, a pharmaceutical company or a medical company that has a product that they need to sell, they're just going to sell it, and that's sort of their job to do. So I think it's our job in the holistic tribe, if you will, to just maybe no pun intended, but as a grassroots effort, to educate people on the benefits of these plants, because that's just the way it has to be done, just from the grassroots effort. that people are talking about it, they're educating. You're just not going to see the commercials. It's not going to be, this revolution is not going to be broadcast. We're just going to share it with open hearts, the information like you do in your home and at these other sites. And I guess that's just the way it's going to go.
Well, also, what I think is so important now is for people to start thinking about humane treatments as opposed to what fills up the bank account. And we've got a painkiller here, and now we have to research and develop drugs to counteract some of the side effects of painkillers. As an example, we've got constipation, then there's diarrhea, and there's nausea, and that goes on and on.
And addiction, yeah.
Addiction. And when people say, well, wait a minute, you can't take a patent out on cannabis. But as a pharmaceutical company, we can sell cannabis. We can make extracts of many substances. For example, pharmaceutical companies make ketamine. That's a synthetic. It's a well-known tranquilizer, and it's Schedule 3. It allows therapists to use it for severe cases of depression.
Right.
So why not start to think about humane forms of treatment rather than the profit at the end of the day?
Yes.
And so I think it's probably going to happen synergistically anyway, that we'll have more and more people who say, you know, I benefited from plant medicine and I was able to come off my antidepressants. I could stop taking the painkiller.
That's right.
I didn't need steroids. I can breathe properly now.
Yeah.
And I think that will spread pretty quickly, which I think it is.
I think so too. I mean, you talked about a renaissance, a plant medicine renaissance, and I talked about a spiritual renaissance, and it's no coincidence they're happening at the same time. And it's just the common denominator, I think, is that it's just more awareness growing and growing exponentially. And this interview is going to be followed by many interviews and just so many out there. And particularly so people can get educated so that they can then experience it. Because once you've experienced it, game over. It's a whole different ball game, and it's quite spectacular on many levels.
Yeah, a good example is I have a friend whose father has dementia.
Okay.
And he was at the point where unable to walk. It was pretty advanced. So I consulted with him and said, look, give your father these extracts. You can get these extracts of cannabis oils from the dispensaries and so on. And you need to provide him these dosages. After a few short weeks, he sends me a video clip of his father walking.
Wow.
So that's just a few short weeks.
Right.
Here's the interesting thing is when the kids are educating the parents on the benefits of plant medicines and psychedelic.
Yes.
And then the older generation, the baby boomers, people in their 70s and 80s, who are getting tremendous benefits from these medicines. Not only obviously is the parent then enjoying that, but the kids and the children are so happy. It's like, wow, you know, my dad, my mom is doing well.
Right.
I don't have to put you in a home. I don't have to have you on these cocktail of drugs that knock you out or make you coherent.
Right.
So here's another example of what I call the generation reversal.
Yeah, I agree. And it's almost, I just got a picture when you said that of a, millennial walking in and turning off the commercials that the baby boomers and up are used to watching about all those pharmaceuticals and all the side effects, and saying there's another way.
Another way.
We've gotten so used to those commercials with all their disclaimers, or many people have, you just accept it. Oh yeah, that's because the guy in the white coat said that's what we should do. So I'm grateful for people like you out there that are helping educate people on these benefits. They can reach you, should they reach you by email or just find you on Meetup, or what's the best way?
I would say at this point, people can get hold of me on Facebook. I'm probably not going to just hand out my phone number just yet.
Sure. I don't know. I'm gonna try and make you famous, but you don't want to be too famous, huh? But
and they can, and also they're welcome to email me. So email is sarkin@hotmail.com.
S-E-L Sarkin, S-A-R-K-I-N @hotmail.com.
Right.
Okay.
And I'm pretty good with responding, and be more than happy to have a consultation and talk to people about their condition.
That's great. So you'll do a consultation with them. Amazing. Thank you very much. And thank you for being here, Sal, and for offering all this information. You obviously have the right experience and have helped a lot of people.
Thank you so much, Scott. It was a pleasure.
Right. Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for watching.